Now, very quickly, I'm joined by Nick Buckley from Manchester, a homeless charity founder, a former mayoral candidate in Manchester. Nick, time limited, but Suella Braverman says that homelessness is a lifestyle choice, and of course, she is being written off as being cruel and evil. Is there even a fraction of truth in what she had to say?
Yes, and I've been saying it for 2 decades. There's many people on the streets who have made that choice to live on the streets. Now, that's a simple answer, but then when you dig underneath that, you realise they're on the streets because services let them down, and the services that are available to them, they don't want because they're not good enough. So therefore, they decide to stay where they are.
So the services aren't good enough. But, I mean, surely if they're being looked after by the state, they at least get somewhere dry to sleep.
You do, but then you can't take drugs, you can't drink alcohol. Most of them won't take your dog into the hostel. So then you think to yourself, well, what's the point? They're also going to kick me out at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to lose this begging spot I've got where I make my money to buy drugs. And it ends up being a whole mess and a whole issue for them. So they just simply go, I'm broken anyway, I'm just not taking your help. What we need to do is offer them some customer service. We need to say, because we want them off the streets, of course we do. We're a compassionate nation. We want them off the streets. We need to fix those individual problems and those barriers that are stopping them taking the help on offer.
Now, Nick, we could, of course, invoke, I mean, it sounds like a long time ago, but we could, of course, invoke the 1824 Vagrancy Act. I mean, if we wanted to, we do have the powers to simply take people off the streets.
We have the power to move them on or to lock him up. They're not really answer to this. We don't want to lock homeless people up. I'm running again for mayor, and I've said I'm going to end rough sleeping in Greater Manchester in 1 year, and that's all it will take, because what we do is we end begging in Greater Manchester with the police, and we will arrest beggars if they don't move on. So there's no incentive then to sit on the streets. We then create a whole new raft of hostels, which will be warehouses with garden sheds inside, and each garden shed will be an independent living pod where they can store their stuff. There'll be kennels there so they can take dogs. We'll say to them, you can drink alcohol if you keep it quiet and we don't see it. You can take drugs as long as we don't see it, because if we see it, it's against the law, you'll be arrested. That gets them off the streets that day, and then the services, social services, mental health, drug addiction support can work with them, move them on. But the number one step is get him off the streets on day one.
That is really interesting. And of those sleeping on the streets, what proportion? Because, you know, I'm told that in London now, most of the people speaking on the streets are foreign nationals, often with little or no English.
It's different in Manchester. There is foreign people sleeping on the streets. They didn't come here to sleep on the streets. That wasn't the dream. They finally living their dream. They came here because they were told that our payments are full of gold and full of money and you can become a millionaire overnight. They've come here and now they're failing, just like many British citizens fail and end up on the streets. We're doing none of them any favours by handing out tents, by giving them meal deals, and letting that night on the sleep, letting that one night on the sleep be slightly easier. Well, I don't want it to be slightly easier. I don't want them there in the first place. We need to help them get off the streets and get a better life.
Nick Buckley, strong words. You make Suella Braverman look like a pussycat, but very, very interesting. Jacob Rees-Mogg, that was really interesting.
Really interesting, yes, and a practical solution to getting people off the streets, because, as Nick was saying, if people can get the help, then they don't want to be on the streets. They want to have a roof over their head, but they have lots of problems. And I've heard before people talk about the drug issue and the dog issue that mean people don't want to take the shelters that are available, but they are available if people need them. I mean, Central London, Westminster has a very good record as a city council of making provision for people if they are willing to accept the constraints and not having the dog.
They've got to live within the rules. No,
yes,
absolutely.